Hi, I'm Britt,
And my name is Alissa.
and this is Skeletales.
And this is the podcast where we strive to answer the age old question of, is my dead grandma watching me?
That's right, Alyssa. We also share true tales of the strange, unusual, and paranormal.
Heck yeah, we do. Hey, Brett, what are we talking about this week?
Well, I got out my old dusty trunk. It's probably haunted. I dusted it off, and inside I found some old stories that I'd been meaning to share for ages and thought I would share them today.
Awesome. I'm excited. I did the same, except I went to my old haunted, dusty chifforobe and dug these out. I still don't know what the fuck a chifforobe is, but it's not even like a good word that rolls off the tongue. Like, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong as well.
I even Googled it to be like, what kind of furniture is this? I still don't know.
I'm not sure.
I'm unsure.
Chifforobe.
Okay. Should I just hop into my old dusty story?
Yeah, please do.
This comes from Jackalope. This happened in 1998. I was hanging out in a new friend's house. We'll call the new friend Sam. Sam ran to the gas station for cigarettes, so I was left alone in the house. I couldn't figure out how to use his remote, so I was stuck watching General Hospital, which made me think of my grandma. I was kind of lost in my thoughts when some motion caught my eye. I looked up and saw an old lady standing in the hallway between bedrooms, holding a laundry basket. I knew my friend had roommates who happened to be out at the time, but I thought maybe someone's mom or grandma and maybe stopped by to do laundry. And I felt that I should explain who I was and why I was there watching a soap opera, just in case. And I said, "Oh, hey, my name's Jackalope. I'm Sam's friend." She didn't respond, and I asked if she wanted to watch TV with me until Sam got back. She just turned and walked through a closed bedroom door. After she, quote unquote, left, I realized that there were no legs, just the upper half of the body and the basket. It wasn't scary, and I don't think she was even aware that I was there. It was probably just some residual, but I'd like to think that she was drawn out by the soap opera I was watching.
It is dramatic. But this always comes back to good God, I hope I don't spend eternity doing fucking laundry.
For real. I didn't even think about that part, but she's just like perpetually stuck doing laundry. Oh my God, that's awful and horrific. That's the most horrific part of this story.
That is the scariest thing about it. I'm not even scared of the ghost. I'm scared that she's like stuck, that is a possibility, that you just do it forever in eternity and it's never done, which is actually quite like the reality of it. It really is never done. Keeping those white robes, those white garments have to stay white somehow.
Those nightgowns, those white nightgowns.
Exactly. They don't just stay white on their own. Oh my gosh.
Alyssa, do you have a fun story to share?
I don't know if this is fun, but I do have a story. This one comes from Anonymous, and they say, when I was about 6 years old, I shared my bedroom with my older brother, and we always slept with our lights on. Our bedroom's door had a window with frosted glass, so I could see outside into the living room, though not that clearly. One night, I woke up around midnight, went to the bathroom, and then returned to my bed to sleep. My brother was asleep at that time, and once I lay in my bed, I looked at my bedroom's door and I saw a palm of someone's hand on the window glass from outside. I could only see the palm, but not the person, since it was dark outside and bright inside. I quickly thought it was just my mom trying to enter my bedroom to check on her sons, so I waited and waited and waited for her to come in. She did not. The palm was still there on the glass. I had no negative thoughts, so I decided to open the door to let the person in. As I was walking toward the door, I could still see the palm until the very instant when I opened the door, and I found nobody outside. The living room was dark and empty. I was confused. I returned to my bed. I looked at the door again, and I saw nothing but darkness outside. I could not sleep, wondering what had just happened. Then I saw the palm again on the window. I was thinking it was my mom, and I waited, and then I opened the door again and I found nobody outside. I walked back to bed again confusedly. The palm was gone. After a few minutes, the palm reappeared. I opened the door for the third time and found no one outside. Then I realized I was being played by something non-human. I immediately became so scared that I could not even speak or scream, and I hid under my brother's bed until the next morning. I kept the event a secret for years because I was convinced nobody would believe my story. My second experience happened about 1 year later. I woke up at midnight feeling the urge to take a leak. The shortcut to the bathroom was through the living room, family room, and my parents' bedroom before reaching the hallway to the bathroom. The intermediate rooms were all dark, but the hallway was well lit. I became afraid of the dark after the first event, but somehow that night I wanted to prove to myself I was not scared. So I challenged myself. I opened my parents' bedroom door. My legs were inside the bedroom and my head was outside. I was observing the family room for several minutes. It was quiet and peaceful. Then suddenly I saw a big and extremely tall woman, more than 7 feet tall, walking in the hallway toward the family room. As she walked under the light, our eyes met each other. It was clear to me she was non-human, not of this world. Her face and skin were almost perfect, resembling mannequins smeared in makeup. She wore a rare traditional local dress widely used during monarchy times, almost a century ago. Fearing what I saw, I abruptly closed and unexpectedly slammed the door. Inside my parents' bedroom, I could still see the hallway through another door's window. I saw a large, dark shadow moving away very fast and disappearing behind walls. The shadow's movement was not human-like, as it did not run away, but it flew away. The noise of the closing door startled and woke my parents up. They asked me what happened. I told them nothing, fearing they would not believe my story. I canceled my bathroom trip and stayed in my parents' bedroom until the next morning. After these two experiences, somehow I stopped seeing events with no logical explanations. Many years later, when I was about to go to college, I decided to tell my parents about the two events. Surprisingly, they believed my stories, especially the second one. My mom said one night she woke up and saw a man standing on her bed, under her feet, looking down on her. She screamed, waking my dad up. My dad also saw the man. Then the man mysteriously vanished into thin air. One striking similarity to my story was that the man also wore the same type of rare traditional clothing. My parents also said several house guests claimed seeing inexplicable activities in our house, including sightings of an odd-looking giant, quote unquote, which we thought was the woman I saw.
It was me.
It was Britt. That's it. Why are you doing creeping around this person's house? I knew it. That's why I told you I was going to see what you said. I was like, I know exactly who this was. Creeping her out.
No ghost, just me.
Yeah. I like how he hid under his brother's bed. Like, I like that strategy. Like, throw your brother. Like, at least they'd have to make it through your brother to get to you under the bed. That's he's thinking.
Good story.
Do you have any more stories if you're brave enough to tell?
I'm going to have to muster up the courage after that one. That freaked me out a little bit. This comes from Patty. When my son was in kindergarten, we moved into a beautiful old Victorian house. Each room had beautiful wood fireplaces with ornate mantels and pocket doors. I felt weird in there from day one, then found out it was a doctor's house, and the departed were laid out in the large parlor at the front of the house for the families to retrieve. Yep, that really freaked me out. One day, I walked into that room, and my son was talking to someone and standing by the fireplace in the parlor. I asked him who he was talking to, and he said, "Oh, lots of people, but mostly that little boy." And he pointed to a pocket door, and at that very moment, bam! It slammed shut. I was scared to death. Those doors are heavy and old and very hard to slide and would be especially hard to slam. I called the landlord the next day and was moved out in less than a week. My son told me after we moved that he misses his old friends in the old house. Talk about shocked, scared, and totally freaked out.
I love it. I hate it. I love it. Like, I'm mad they moved. Like, come on. But I also, at the same time, if I was in that situation, I'd be out of there. But I want more stories like that.
I know. Yeah, like just that one incident, like, come on, let's find out who's this little boy? Who's he talking to?
I just saw a story recently so similar to that, that like a lady's little daughter was talking to somebody all the time. They could hear them talking, go into the room. They're like, who are you talking to? They're like, oh, I'm just talking to Margaret. Didn't really think much of it. And then they were like demoing a wall that was adjacent to the kid's room. And they found a letter in there and it was addressed or signed Margaret. Like it was
Oh my
like an old timey letter from like the 1800s.
Love those stories. I could listen to them for hours.
I know they're my faves.
Future episodes, get ready, kid stories.
All the time.
All right, what do you got? What do you got?
Okay, so this is from the website called Dead History, and it has some old-timey newspaper headline that says, Thanksgiving ghost flags Lehigh train, annual appearance of spectral figure that haunts railroad line in the east.
Beautiful.
Okay, so on Thanksgiving Day, 1902, a southbound train was nearing Geneva, New York, and came upon the Marsh Bridge. As the train approached the bridge, the engineer and firemen aboard heard a piercing scream. When they looked up, they saw a white figure standing to the east of the bridge, frantically waving its arms. The engineer brought the train to a stop, and as he did so, they heard another scream, and the phantom disappeared before their eyes. The two men got out of the train and inspected the track and surrounding area for the screaming weirdo they saw just moments before. Nothing was out of place on the track, and there was no sign of any person or thing nearby. As they started across the bridge, they heard the shriek one final time. The train pulled into the station, and the men shared their odd experience with other railroad workers. They learned that there was an accident at that bridge years prior. The engineer and fireman both died when the train went off the Marsh Bridge tracks. The article said that the fireman's body was lost to quicksand and never recovered. Ever since that accident, a shrieking phantom is said to be spotted on this bridge every year around Thanksgiving. Really, I just like the quicksand bit about that story. It was a ghost and quicksand.
It has everything. The haunted bridge, ghosts, quicksand.
And Geneva's not far from my home. I didn't realize that quicksand was a real threat to my existence growing up. But he just fell off the train, and then he just got like, they're like, oh, he got lost to this quicksand.
The train didn't go off the bridge. Just the two people fell off the train, off the bridge.
Okay, so then I guess this dead history thing is like trying to figure out if this really happened.
Oh, okay.
And they go on to say that this was not an easy thing to find out. And they started to think that it was just an urban legend, but they did find an actual event that very closely matches the details in the story. And so there's another little clip, and it says, flood, railroad disaster near Geneva. A culvert gives way on the Auburn Road. The engine is completely submerged. Engineer found dead in cab. Fireman drowned in quicksand. But no, they didn't say that. It just says fireman drowned. Yeah. So weirdly, I found another story about Thanksgiving and trains. And I don't know what I was going through when I was looking for these stories, what rabbit hole I went down, because again, we're doing our found episodes, kind of going through the old archives. So basically these twins located in Pennsylvania, every Thanksgiving, their grandfather would tell them the same story about the haunted railroad near their house. And their grandfather was a railroad worker. And for about a century or over a century, there had been these reports of these green orbs and dancing figures at night at this one spot on the train line. And the rumor was that it was the ghosts of dead Irish railway workers who died of cholera. And so every year the grandfather would tell them the stories. And then when their grandfather passed away, they actually got a bunch of his documents. And because he was kind of high up in the railway department or whatever, they went through all these reports, and there were several like documented instances of people who work the railway and just pedestrians and everything reporting these glowing figures and these glowing orbs at this one spot. And then one of the pieces of paper actually had an X on the spot next to the railway lines where they're like, this is where all those Irish workers died of cholera and they were buried. So they go out to the woods and start digging. And eventually they hit a femur. And this is after they've already found like a pipe and a couple other things where poor Irish immigrants wouldn't just discard those, right? Like those are not something, you don't have any money. You're not just going to throw your pipe on the ground. It's not a disposable item. So then they end up finding a skull, and one of the skulls has a bullet hole in the skull. And then another skull has like this dent in it that definitely was there, before the person was buried. And so now they're like going through and realize a bunch of these people were actually murdered, that they didn't just die of cholera. So this is sort of the ongoing mystery of this site now, that there were like 56 Irish immigrants who were barely here before they all got cholera. And either they went and tried to get help from the community and the community just killed them or shot them because they were trying to escape and they were scared it was going to spread the plague. Or another theory is that they were mercy killings because all these people were just dying. So people just went into camp and quote unquote, put them out of their misery. But now for all these years and all these centuries and decades later, their ghosts dance aside the Pennsylvania Railroad line, which I think is in Monopoly.
It sure as heck is.
There we go.
Oh my gosh. I thought that was going to end with just an orb on a railroad. And I was going to be like, Alissa, for shame. Mm-hmm. But they actually found body parts. They found bones. That's so wild. When you really actually find the proof that there was like death that happened in this paranormal location. Oh, that is brilliant. So this is not the first I've heard of railroad orbs, though. There are like video evidence of these orbs happening on train tracks around different places. I don't know if it's around the world or just in the US, but it's a kind of a thing.
I know what you're talking about, and it's called like globe lightning or something like that. And I think they also think it's like St. Elmo's fire is like a similar thing.
Yeah.
I feel like we've actually talked about that on the podcast before as well. And I know exactly what you're talking about. I've seen the globe lightning that you're talking about on a train track. But I think that's super rare unless, okay, there's a couple theories. I have a couple theories for this then.
Okay.
One is that there are all these rotting bodies underneath, and a lot of the like will-o-wisps or whatever that are, supposed to be ghosts and are actually gases. And so that's possibly it, that it was just like the decomposing bodies, gases releasing in that spot because there was such a like
large amount of body fumes.
Yeah, condensed amount of body juice under there that like leaking out and making that. So that's very possible, a very plausible reason or explanation. But also, yeah, like you said, I have seen that globe lightning along rail tracks. So it's probably something with like the metal and the friction or the rail lines or something, or just the way that's a continued long stretch of metal that maybe like can produce that. I don't know.
I just love that they sleuthed it out. They're like, cool, we have this treasure, or not treasure map. We have this map with like X marks this spot. Let's go investigate. And they go and they start digging and jackpot. Oh, it's so good. Nice work, people.
So do you have any other stories, Britt?
I do have another story, but before I get started on it, I'm not sure if you can relate, but I have a tendency to get super distracted. I have a hard time focusing on just one task like all of the time.
Yes.
So I told you before that I recently connected with this company, Magic Mind. They make these little green shots that you take instead of your morning coffee or with your morning coffee, and it boosts your energy, gives clarity, and helps with productivity. So the shots themselves have this like slightly sweet taste and this mild green flavor, but they're really quite pleasant to drink. I was told to wait about 3 days to get the full effect of the drink. For me, it was like 1 hour. I drank it and I was blasting through my to-do list like I have never done before. I felt calm, productive, and I only needed like 1 cup of coffee that day instead of my normal 3.
I feel like I need some of that. I am waking up tired. I fell asleep 3 times already during this episode while you were talking. I need some of that. Magic mind, man. I need it. I was eating mushrooms over Thanksgiving dinner too. And I was thinking about it. I was like, if these were cordyceps, I probably wouldn't be so tired right now.
That's right. It is made with all natural ingredients. There's no sugar. It's nut free, vegan, keto, paleo. I know these things matter to you. With it being all natural, though, it's got like matcha for energy. It's got nootropics, ashwagandha, rhodiola rosea, lion's mane mushrooms, cordyceps mushrooms, but not the kind from that TV show you were talking about.
Rest of us.
You can get your own Magic Mind at magicmind.com/skeletales with code skeletales20. You can also get up to 56% off your first subscription or 20% off your one-time purchase. That's skeletales20 for 56% off. It works, y'all. Also, if you're already a subscriber, you can still get that discount. Just use code skeletales20. Now onto my story. This one is from Panther Draws. I grew up in an area that used to be Potawatomi Sioux, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, and French fur trading village. This history is relevant. Outside of town, just down the road from my grandma's house, was a clearing in the woods on top of a hill, right next to a spring. When I was a kid, my dad chose to situate a single-story ranch-style house in that clearing, and we moved into it when I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. The weirdness started right away. Within a few days of moving in, when we were all watching a movie in the living room, we heard a loud bang, like a gunshot in the kitchen. We went to see if something had fallen over, though, and nothing was out of place. Then came the silhouettes that would walk behind us in our reflections, always in the kitchen windows. After that came the footsteps on the roof, always after midnight, pacing slowly from one end of the house to the other, like someone was keeping watch. Sometimes I would go out to the back porch to see if anyone was up there, and of course, there never was. Finally, it all came to head when I was 16. It was late, and I was shutting everything down for the night, turning off all the lights room by room as I headed to my bedroom. I stopped in the kitchen just long enough to get a cup of water, then turned off that light. At this point, only the hallway light and my bedroom light were on. I was taking a drink as I headed into the dining room, and when I lowered the cup, I saw a person standing in front of me, and I stopped. It was another girl who looked about my age. She had long blonde hair that was wild and messy, like she'd just rolled out of bed and come running. And she was wearing a dingy, whitish Civil War era nightgown, like they always do. She had blue eyes that were open wide in sheer terror. I don't know if she was looking at me or at someone who had once been standing in that exact same spot, but she clearly saw someone or something that had terrified her. Then I blinked, and she was gone. Some years later, after I'd half forgotten the incident, I was reading up my hometown's history. I'd already known about the Potawatomi village, but I hadn't known about the French traders, nor had I known that after the Civil War, indigenous peoples and French folk alike were rounded up and forcibly relocated by the U.S. Army so that the land could be seized by the government and redistributed to the soldiers as payment for their service during the war. And I thought about our convenient little clearing in the woods and the footsteps on the roof in the middle of the night and the shadows and the gunshot and the girl. And I couldn't help but just wonder if it was related.
I'm curious where she's from because French trappers, I thought that would be more of a Eastern thing. But then the Sioux, isn't that like from the plains? The Potawatomi are first mentioned in French records, which suggests that in the early 17th century, they lived in what is now southwestern Michigan.
Oh, okay. I mean, definitely sounds haunted.
Yeah. Oh, so she thinks that there was an attack and the little blonde girl was like part of that.
It sounds like it. It sounds like the girl would have had to been related with the like fur trading company.
Right. The blonde hair, blue eyed.
And what she was terrified at, nobody knows.
We've talked about this before, but you would expect many more Native American ghosts to be wandering around based on the horrors and tragedies.
Oh, I know. I know. I've thought about that too. And maybe it's different hauntings, maybe it's hauntings in different ways.
True. Also, I don't know if you remember, I think it must have been last Thanksgiving. I didn't talk about trains. I talked about when the pilgrims arrived to America, there were very few Native Americans because they'd already been wiped out by plague from like the
Yes, you did mention
conquistadors.
this.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that the pilgrims thought it was a sign from God that God had come along and killed all these Native Americans for them so they could come scoop up the land that they were, their God given right. Um, so yeah, that was why did I just bring that up? Oh, because like that happened a long time ago, right? The 1600s was
Yeah.
when that must have happened. 1500s, 1600s, the plague swept through. So maybe ghosts expire. Maybe they did all their haunting and now they've
Like,
gone
we're good.
around.
Going to the next realm or whatever happened.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a time period on it. We have a lifespan. Maybe there's a ghost
A
span.
ghost life. It's true. You don't see a lot of like cavemen ghosts lingering
No.
around. Mm-mm.
And we're just in the era of like the Civil War, white gowned ghosts right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they'll expire. And then we'll get into the boxer short and tank top wearing short era
Our
shortly here. It's coming
grandchildren,
along.
yeah, our
Mhm.
grandchildren are gonna be like, she's wearing that velvet jumpsuit. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
like yeah, she had a juicy couture across her ass. That ghost, the juicy ass ghost.
Oh god. Do you have another story to share, Alyssa?
I actually do. If we need one, I got one.
I think we got time for one more.
Okay, so I love time travel. We know this. So I have a story about a time slip, and apparently it's a thing. Okay, my last story also is by Anonymous, and they say it's a dreary, damp, dark fall night here in Ohio, which is bringing back memories for me of an experience I had about 15 years ago when I lived in Pennsylvania and I wanted to share. I had a jogging route I would take often, which took me past an old abandoned elementary school. It was a two-story 1920s era gray brick building that I believe shut down in the 1980s and sat empty and decaying since. I grew up in the school district and it was definitely closed before I started school. The doors and windows were boarded up and there were no lights on around the building. It was intimidating to run past even in daylight, let alone at night. A few weeks after moving into the neighborhood, I got back from work late on a damp fall evening and decided to go for a run. I ended up running into one of my neighbors and held up a bit before continuing. So it got dark while I was on my run and I didn't have a flashlight. It was one of those nights where there was no moon because of the clouds. So it was really dark. It began to drizzle and got foggy. I turned the corner to run down the block that went past the school and I saw it was all lit up. I was in the zone with my run and for some reason didn't think anything of it. In fact, I was comforted that there were lights on because that stretch would normally be pitch dark at night. As I ran past the school, I could see in the ground floor windows. I remember seeing fall decorations on the walls like the kids would make for their classroom. There were people in the school, but it didn't hit me as strange. It was like they were having an open house or conference night or something. I vividly remember seeing one man in his 40s with a brown sweater and thick rimmed glasses standing in one of the classrooms. I continued on my run and making another block until it clicked in my brain that what I just saw made no sense. So I dropped dead in my tracks. What? That's not what you did. You stopped dead in your tracks. You didn't drop dead in your tracks. You wouldn't be writing this story. Silly. So I stop dead in my tracks and turn around. The block behind me is now pitch black. I run back to the school to confirm it was dark, abandoned, and still boarded up. This experience really affected me at the time to the degree I brought it up with my doctor because I was worried I had hallucinated it. I was not on medication. I did not do drugs. I was not drinking. My doctor chalked it up to an overactive imagination / daydreaming on my run. I feel like it was too vivid of an experience to be that. I probably ran by that school about 100 times after that, always hoping to see this again, but never did. This school stood for a few more years until it was finally torn down. Every year around this time, I think about it, especially on dark, drizzly nights like tonight.
Ooh, said time travel? It's got to be time travel, right?
A little time slip, a little glimpse into the past. Maybe that runner's high took him to another plane of existence, man.
Oh, ooh,
Uh,
good one. Vividly being able to like see a person's knowing what color sweater, what type of glasses, that specific of a detail couldn't just be an overactive imagination.
No, I mean, the fact that they went to their doctor about it too is like, hey, like that lends a little credence in my eyes. There's a whole sect of people. I can't remember what they call it. It has the word temporal in it, but people are like obsessed with these like time slips. It's another one of those like glitch in the matrix. Like, look at these 4 cups that I keep finding in my house. It's like that sort of same thing that once you like know the name for it, it's like, oh, there's so many of these stories. So
I think that might
I
have to
love
be
it.
an episode of itself too. That I could hear those stories all day long.
I absolutely could too.
If you have any stories you've been sitting on, maybe holding off, waiting to share, you can email them to us
At skeletalespodcast@gmail.com. You slide those messages right into the hot box. Slide them, squeeze them right in there. All right. We want to hear them all. Or you can call us at our hotline.
302-689-DEAD, 302-689-3323. We are on all of the socials under Skeletales Podcast, YouTube at Skeletales Pod. We have a Patreon. Go support us there. We have a merch shop, Skeletales Podcast at Etsy.com. Go support us there. Is there anything else, Alyssa?
Britt, no, haunt you later?
I guess so. On y'all later. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.